Matter is a product of consciousness. In about 100 years' time from now, through the very good pioneering works further developing and advancing in quantum research and genetic research, consciousness will eventually and unavoidably be verified as the essential foundation of all reality, impersonally and non-locally so. And the brain will be truly understood for what it actually biologically is, as the personal receiver and receptacle to house and hone that non-local, impersonal, boundless field of consciousness personally, to be used for individual operation and function, just like a radio receiver that focuses the non-local to the local. What is considered as the standard in university psychiatric education, the so-called qualified biased misperspective of consciousness is a product of matter, will eventually fade away into history for what it truly actually is, as a very ignorant and gross lack of true understanding, and nothing more than a dark, blind, backward, barbaric, mere misbelief about the actuality of reality. When it comes to mental pathology, the likes of psychosis, psychosis is nothing more than an acute, accelerated state of mind and being, too much information to cope with, of mostly internal subconscious stimulus that cannot be properly filtered by the current standard capacity of the evolved human brain at this stage of human evolution. Quite simply, the human brain is not yet developed or advanced enough to cope with and assimilate more than what it can chew. In other words, psychosis is nothing more than extreme information overload, both internal and external. And because of this extreme excess upon the individual, most of the time they are left greatly guessing as to what it all actually really means. And in this respect, there is a very great difference between the actual subconscious features of psychosis as opposed to the person's interpretation of it, which in most cases leads to extreme paranoia and delusion because of that huge, confusing, unknowing and uncertainty of those subconscious impressions and stimulus coming forth upon the conscious surface mind. And very sadly so, 10 times out of 10, the counsellor and psychiatrist is and can only go on the outward expressed objective features of the interpreted delusion of that deeper psychotic features experienced. Never ever to have any true insight and knowing into what the client is actually experiencing within. Why so? Because no one can see inside the head of the client, but only the client themselves. And if, through further development and experience, the client develops the deeper subjective insight to be able to discern between these two differences and express that accurately in an outward way, then the psychiatrist and modern psychiatry in general may be able to actually glimpse the deeper, truer nature for what psychosis actually is. And in this respect, as I myself have come to personally realise out of my own good understanding and insights about the mind and consciousness, this is what hallucination actually is in a nutshell. Subconscious impressions and stimulus coming forth and projected upon the conscious awake state of mind. To put this another simpler way, it is nothing more than the dream state coming forth and upon the awake state. Hence, hearing, seeing and smelling things out there in objective reality that are not actually there. And this is usually due to the fact that with this situation, the individual in the psychotic state has usually not slept for a long period of time, making and allowing for the subconscious dream state to clash with and upon the conscious awake state. That's basically and essentially what hallucination of psychosis actually is. Just remember, you heard this new realized insight from me first. As extremely cruel, inhumane and barbaric as the history of the industrial age evolved psychiatric systems treatment is most very badly guilty of in human life and care, back in our ancient cultures, however, such as the Native American Indians and Buddhist cultures and traditions, mental pathology, the likes of psychosis, were not even demoralizingly and inhumanely treated in such a cruel, dark, inhumane way as today, or even considered to be a mental pathology, as our current Western backwards barbaric mental health system very offensively presumes nowadays. In our far wiser ancient times, long before the birth of the materialist westernized industrial age, psychosis and the likes were realized by the tribal shamans to be nothing more than a premature, unripe and quickened state of an early opening up into shamanic and mystical identity for the individual. If anything, these states of being were considered reverent and spiritually gifted before their due time of ripening upon the individual. In these far more humane and wiser, insightful times, the individual undergoing such a quickening state would be gently, carefully and respectfully taken aside from the community and cared for under the good guidance of the shamans, to see them through the quickening state into proper initiation and function, and to incorporate that into life for their greater well-being, what would nowadays be called full recovery and returned stability to regular life again. But as is the case with such quickened initiatory states of the mystically inclined, it is not just a return to regular normal stability and back to the usual way of accepted socialized life. No. The very reason why we have these quickened mystical states for us to have in human life is to bring us into greater realization and understanding about the true nature of life and reality in general. Not only is this mystic quickening into initiation of immense benefit and liberation in the long term for the person experiencing it, but they are then in the very good, insightful position of direct authority to pass on that deeper mystical knowledge for the benefit, inspiration, hope and well-being of others. As my good, wise friend Bill Guy of Schizophrenia Fellowship's Recovery Services has most accurately coined in this regard, from recovery to discovery. This has been the very real and self-realized journey I have been extremely blessed and fortunate to undergo in my early life. And if only all who suffer so extremely from such states of being all had the opportunity to be graced with such a well and beneficial flowering journey as this, the world would truly see, appreciate and accept the very real reason why we experience these things in our human life. As always, for me now, it will continue to remain my most very deepest heartfelt wish that all who are traumatized in this way have the very real hope and opportunity to take this most very beneficial journey for what it is truly meant to be and destined for, to reach the fulfilling goal of lasting recovery and redemption into greater realization, understanding and freer liberated identity in life. Yes, indeed, the journey is important, but not more important than the destination. as so many habitually misbelieve in life nowadays. Just in case you missed it, the very reason why we take any journey in the first place is to reach the goal and destination aimed for. As so many miss the vital, essential obvious about this, and others in the mental health profession who have based their university degrees on this backward premise to achieve a very limited and fallen short qualified status degree in modern psychiatry, there are actually very real goals and destinations to reach within the continuing journey of life. And when it comes to mental pathology, no one wants it to be a lasting journey for them in life. No, definitely not. Mental illness is not meant to be the person's own and lasting journey in life. Like any and all suffering in life, suffering is meant to be overcome as quickly and healthily as possible. We may not have cures yet, but full recovery from episodes of psychosis and a return to lasting stability is always possible to be achieved. Even if we do continue to encounter further episodal relapses in life, return to lasting stability is always a very real possibility to be had in life, no matter how many further episodes encountered in life, fleeting or otherwise. And when it comes to cures, let alone you successfully achieving long-lasting recovery for all, the very reason why you do not have cures as yet is because of the very real fact that you so-called qualified psychiatrists, professors and researchers still continually fail to truly understand and realise reality for what it actually is and how it actually works. To those of you so-called qualified psychiatrists and psychologists who have based your worthless university degrees on this very limited premise of journey over destination, you are very wrong in your qualifications on this. And your worthless qualified degree is based on a huge lack of true understanding and insight about reality for what it actually is. Here it is for you, plain and simple in principle. The destination to reach here is full and long-lasting recovery, and to hopefully maintain that well-being for the rest of your days in the continuing journey of healthy life. To state it very obviously for you, life is the journey, not the illness. As much as our modern day psychiatric system still continually fails time after time to achieve this reality of full and lasting recovery for consumers, and for this very reason why the failing system assumes mental illness is to be an accepted journey in life without any real hope of lasting recovery, the greater way of the shaman and mystic offers far, far more real and lasting hope than what our modern Western mental health system could ever offer or achieve for us in life today. As many well wiser, realised and fully recovered ones of us out there are, I am also very real living proof of that better, greater journey, and further living proof that the liberated destination of long-lasting stability is fully attainable in life, even as much as modern society still misbelieves that is not at all possible for such acute states as these experienced in life. And to state the very blatant obvious about all this to you so-called qualified psychiatrists, professors and researchers out there, just in case you missed it, and it is not really hit home for you yet, it would be far wiser and humbler of you all to start very respectfully and properly listening to and acting on the better, successful advice and insights from those of us out there who have actually very successfully achieved what you all hope and long for in your continual failing profession and research. Long-lasting recovery and stability in life. Rather than time after time, you very contemptuously, foolishly ignoring and denying our much better well way that is far more successful and lasting than your own so-called qualified limited capacities and limited education about it all. Which I may further say, you continually pursue in utter fumbling blindness of professional guesswork and deductional error after error to achieve nothing really true and actual, and continue in this way with your continuing failing university qualified system upon us all who need recovery most of all. And the saddest thing of all, it is we who suffer for your lack of true understanding, true compassion, and true knowledge about the mind, the brain, consciousness, and reality in general. And for as long as that wiser, true knowledge and wisdom has been around for all ages of ages, for all of us to truly benefit from, you so-called qualified psychiatrists, professors, and researchers still continually and very arrogantly so deny that greater realized, sacred, spiritual, mystical knowledge and enduring self-realized heritage, continually trying to debunk it as nothing more than mental pathology and hallucination, and blindly continue, very arrogantly so, in your futile, useless, backward, barbaric, materialist methods of research and reduction. And it is we who need that recovery most of all that keep suffering for your rude, stubborn ignorance and very offensive, contemptuous ways against that better, greater way for us all. That is the most saddest and most offensive, disrespectful thing of all, and about you all. For all of us out there who greatly need and require so, if you truly desire to achieve the goal of lasting stability and well-being in life, and come into greater true understanding about life and reality in general for what it actually is, then I very devoutly invite and encourage you to seek out the knowledge and wisdom of all our world's wisdom traditions, both Eastern and Western, far better and far well over and above modern Western materialist, psychiatric university standards of practice. Our world's wisdom traditions have been around since the beginning of human self-realization, back to unrecorded time immemorial. It is that ancient mystical esoteric tradition that has firmly and accurately stood the test of time for many thousands of years, far, far long before the very narrow, very limited and arrogant presumptuous window of modern Western materialist psychiatry, which by comparison does not even really measure up against that greater, sacred, better way in well-living of life. For more reasoned accounts on this more hopeful, accurate, and real perspective on mental pathology, the works of Carl Jung, William James, and Joseph Campbell would be very good resources to seek out regarding the transpersonal and spiritual premature nature of psychosis. So finally, before I play my very insightful, pioneering film here for you, I want to make one thing very crystal clear for you all. Those of you in modern day educated and so-called qualified university-based psychiatry who still stubbornly and blindly hold to the very backward, barbaric, dark ages of the materialist educated perspective to reality, Your days are very much numbered. In about 100 years' time from now, you will all be revealed for what you truly are. Completely dead wrong about life and reality. What you have blindly presumed about the mind, brain, consciousness and reality for so long, your current history books of psychiatry will be overturned and rewritten, and you will have nowhere else to go but to unavoidably and undeniably accept reality for what it actually is, what it always has been, and what it always will be. And the most ironic, laughable thing of all about all of this is it will be you materialist atheists who discover that eternal sacred divinity in which we all live and share. 2013 was that crossing threshold into that greater discovery destined to grace us all very soon, and very equally so. For now though, while we eagerly await that better well time to arrive for us, take my better, wiser, mystical advice here for you all. Go and properly study and listen and accurately educate yourselves into the very sacred knowledge of those far wiser self-realized ones than your own limited so-called qualified psychiatric professional guess-working selves. Go and listen properly and well to those many masters who are and were thousands of light years ahead of you all, and the rest of us. Those many masters who have testified to the same essential, enduring, ultimate realization about the actual nature of reality and life, time after time, age after age. Matter is a product of consciousness.
Leading historian and mythologist Joseph Campbell once stated, "The shaman is the person, male or female, who in early adolescence underwent a severe psychological crisis, such as today would be called psychosis. This overwhelming psychological experience turns him totally inward. The whole subconscious has opened up, and they have fallen into it. And it has been described many, many times, and occurs all the way from Siberia right through to the Americas, down to Tierra del Fuego. It's a kind of schizophrenic crack-up the shaman experiences." Contrary to the materialist perspective most generally adopted in modern Western psychiatry, the mental health industry has yet to properly research and investigate the actuality of genuine mystic experiences in relationship to acute psychosis. The accepted definitions of psychotic and mystic experiences are not as differently extreme, black and white, good and bad, as the immediate uneducated eye cares to admit or truly understand and accept. But to the more discerning and refined eye are more greyed together and overlapping in features, and have far more in common than we ever care to admit to out in the open amongst society in general. Being of the mystic temperament myself, I do not pertain that consciousness is merely a product of grey matter, electrolysis of the brain. Rather, I believe that all realities of existence are a product of an all-pervasive, absolute impersonal consciousness of all. To state the ever-present actuality about this being so, how else do all the atoms in existence operate so perfectly and precisely to make up all the wondrous beauty of all nature and manifest reality in and around us every day of our lives, both relatively and in total? Why? Because conscious activity pervades it all, non-locally and boundlessly, beyond anything we have yet to come to properly understand and realize collectively in total. And it is this boundless conscious presence of all that makes for the unity of all life, and allows for the direct mystical experience of conscious unity to be realized by the individual. In this greater way, we are all essentially connected and just as much made up of the same stuff of reality. All of us, the mentally challenged just as equally, beyond any differences of prejudice. In this greater, more hopeful and eternal perspective of reality, the brain is merely the personal transmitter to house, or rather, hone non-local consciousness personally, for individual use and operation, just like a radio receiver. And once the body dies, the individual consciousness returns to the greater source consciousness of all, as if like the air in a balloon returning to the greater when the balloon gives out and explodes. In other mystical terms, the inner and the outer become one and the same, boundless beyond all limits and distinctions. Appreciating and complimenting the insights of Joseph Campbell and other such qualified, insightful past works as William James and Carl Jung, psychosis in a more humane and dignified definition of it, and more importantly, for those who have experienced it, psychosis is actually subconscious stimulus projection, personal and collective, coming forth upon the physical senses. In other words, the dream state coming upon the awake state, which in a clinical definition of it is what hallucination really is, hearing and seeing things out from the mind that are not actually there in objective reality. So if one is deprived of sleep for a long period of time, a clash between the dream state and the awake state will eventually occur, seeing, hearing and smelling things upon the senses that are not actually there. This is what psychosis equals, and what hallucination is in a nutshell. Just as much as acute chemical reactions and stimulus happening in the brain. Unless one is extremely discerning and able to step back into the witness state of observation, it can become extremely difficult and confusing for the experiencer to discern between the subconscious state conflicting upon the awake state. In many ways, generally speaking, psychosis is nothing more than extreme information overload, both inner and outer, subjective and objective, subconscious and conscious, and sometimes all together at once. As a result of this acute overload, the experiencer becomes very confused, deluded, bad word, about it all, and in many ways it is very scary and overwhelming, a revved up rush, and far too much to contend with at any one time. To use a simple analogy, it is like a 60-watt light bulb being plugged into a 60,000-watt socket. Extreme information overload is what occurs upon the brain, which at this current stage of human evolution is not fully evolved or advanced enough to cope with such collective, unified information all at once. Personal identification at this deeper collective, subconscious level of the universal and impersonal mind is one of the reasons why messianic identifications are not so uncommon in this excessive state of being, the Jesus syndrome, as it is very badly termed in modern Western materialist psychiatry. It will probably take another good 2,000 years at least before the human brain develops to a stage, or rather state of mind and being, before it will be in a position to normally and stably cope with the deeper, non-dual, unified capacity upon it, or rather, more accurately, surrendered to the mystical state of complete unity as a constant in everyday human life. Subconsciously speaking, the greater collective subconscious mind is all to do with the combined history of humanity in total, along with the deeper archaic symbolisms associated with that. And as far as genetic memory is concerned, memory in this genetic way applies collectively, just as much as individually. Not only is our personal family line history of heredity firmly embedded and established in our genes' memory within us, but as we are also a general human being in basic essential makeup and structure to start with, in foundation we just as much carry the entire genetic memory of humanity in total within us also, the good and the bad, right back to the beginning of time. And in many real ways, this deeper collective unified genetic memory is very much expressed and sometimes suppressed within us via the collective subconscious mind, universally and equally within us all. Just as Carl Jung advocated, the true deeper subconscious mind is not just personal and of the individual displaced alone, but rather collectively of humanity in total, and of complete potential in us all. So in truth, psychosis has nothing to do with evil spirits taking over the individual's mind. No. Rather, it is all to do with the personal mind not being able to cope with the excessive and unavoidable plunge into the deeper end of the greater collective subconscious mind. From what has been collectively accounted by many who have experienced both psychosis and the mystical, there is actually no dark side to our truer, deeper essence and spirit, and the spiritual realms of reality, since spirit is always true and pure, and is the only realm of existence that is not prone to corruption of the temporal and finite. The dark side of nature is all to do with the areas of mind, both personal and collective. As it has been declared by the wise and holy of all our spiritual traditions, all ignorance is of the mind alone. In other words, the mind does not have the answers to life, since it is always questioning everything about reality and trying to work it out. By its very nature, the mind is nothing more than just one big questioning machine. It does not hold the answers to life. Via the subconscious, all the answers to life and existence reside in the true deeper self of us all, the unmanifest infinite potential in which we all equally share, beyond all relative difference and limitations. This is the mystical relationship between lower self and higher self, life's journey and conscious unfolding process from our ego state back into our true essential unified state of being, self-actualization and realization. So, if anything, actual insanity and psychopathic tendencies is when a person is very stable in mind and yet still very consciously and premeditatively takes a personal inclination and bent to dark tendencies and qualities of nature, which in truth is actually totally against the natural flow of life and human evolution, and further, complete profanation against the greater good, ethical and spiritual ideal of all. For the good well-being of the individual and the greater community at large, this dark, extreme tendencies of mind frame are to be very much avoided if we are to flourish successfully and harmoniously, all together, collectively and generally. The mystical state of mind and being, both earthly and spiritually, is considered by most of our world religious traditions to be the original and refined, mature state of the human being. Considering the many profound, unripe, quickened, collective subconscious things that human beings have experienced in the psychotic state over the ages of humanity, it is only a matter of time and endurance of evolution when the human brain has matured enough to properly handle the deeper, quickened, collective subconscious state experienced in psychosis to a normal and manageable degree, to understand and assimilate such profound archaic information properly and accurately, which ultimately leads deeper into the unified state of the human psyche, the subconscious doorway into our mystical and spiritual origins universally. In this deeper esoteric understanding, people in this situation of life now with psychosis are the premature and leading pioneers of the mind. It is these ones who are the future mystics and shamans of humanity. In short and somewhat controversially, psychosis is the future undeveloped mind of humanity. Quite ironic, really, when considering psychology was originally and essentially the study and understanding of the human psyche and spirit. Having revealed this here, it is reasonable to appreciate that the state of psychosis is a premature, quickened and unripe state of the mystical state, and it is only a matter of time when the mind has evolved and matured enough to normally function universally, just as well as individually. This is the spiritual paradox of life, and the greater mysteries of relationship between the individual and the universal, the relative and the absolute, the temporal and the eternal, as one greater unified self of all. To use a very appropriate analogy, just as the wave is never separate from the greater ocean and all other waves via that, nor is the individual consciousness separate from the universal divine consciousness. As it has been declared in Western scripture since ages past, for in him we live and move and have our being. In other simpler terms, the all is far eternally greater than the sum of all the parts.